Good afternoon. Welcome to another episode of Women Speaking. My name is Caroline Ayot and I'm your host. Today we'll be sharing the women's perspective on the national budget 2025-2026. Last week, the Minister of Finance, Mr. Matia Kasaja, read the 72.38 trillion budget to the nation. And in it, we had several programs tailored towards women empowerment. Today, I have a panel of distinguished guests who will be discussing for us this in depth. I'll introduce them, starting from my extreme right, coming in. On my extreme right is Esther Nakitende from the Women's Pro Bono Initiative. Esther, thank you so much for coming to the show.
You're welcome, Nancy.
Okay. And right next to her is Eliot Orizarwa, who is the ED of the Women and Girl Child Development Association and a gender-responsive budget expert. Welcome to the show, Eliot.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
I'm going to get right into the conversation, and I want you people to share with me your perspective, your general perspective of the budget in a minute roughly each, because we have almost 57% allocated towards settling the debt of the nation. What are your general perspectives of the budget? I'll start with Eliot, and then Esther, you can come in.
Thank you so much, Caroline. Dear viewers, yes, I'm Eliot Orizarwa, and I work for the Women and Girl Child Development Association, and I facilitate the gender responsive budgeting in Uganda. I'm happy to be here again. I'm happy to be here, I must say.
Yes.
And I'm glad that we are talking about a subject that is dear to my heart and something that I really want everyone to put their mind and souls on it, because it's very important. We usually say that a budget is a political statement, but it's something that is important for everyone in the country to know, and especially women and the youth. And as you say, that the budget was read last week on 12th June, it used to be a time where everyone had to leave their work, leave their desks, and even those in the gardens leave and go to listen to the radio, and people would run to buy sales, those who really listen to the radio, to know exactly what has been read and to know exactly what the government has put in place in terms of planning and how they are going to spend the money that has been planned for the citizens of the country. Yeah, the budget, myself, I did not definitely sit to listen, but from the conversation that we have had and then the spaces where we are so excited. Yes, we have seen the 72.3 trillion coming to the country, and looking at how the country is moving. As you all know, that it was read after the president really gave us the state of the nation, and where he was looking at how development Uganda is at, and he really came out strongly to say IMF says that Uganda is the 7th country in terms of growth and development. But generally when you look at the budget, the 72 trillion, and then you look at the amount of the debt, then it leaves us as women in a question of whether the halfway budget is going to be allocated responsively. And definitely as women and youth, and maybe persons with special needs, and maybe looking at the gaps that we have in terms of gender inequality, we seem to think that the country is developing, but with the amount of debt that we have registered, I think is about, 38 something. It may not really change a lot in terms of the economic growth and in terms of development for women. I know from the perspective of the human capital development and all those sectors that are around there, health, education, water and sanitation, and agriculture. Those are the areas that especially us, the women and the youth, would want to see money coming in. But we are still wondering if the increased debt. The increased debt is going to help us. And even looking at the state of how our corruption has increased, we still ask whether this budget 2025-2026 is going to be allocated in a fair way. And that's why we need to call upon everyone, and especially the citizens, not only at the national level, but even at local level, to find out exactly how much has been allocated to the sectors that really are going to help women in terms of health perspective, in terms of economic perspective. And yes, I can talk about this, but from all this perspective, I would also want to put a lot of emphasis on agriculture and agro-industrialization, and where the country is taking us with the type of electricity that we have, with all these changes, and then with even the women who are in subsistence and the level of the understanding and the machinery that they have. Allow me to end there for now.
Thank you very much.
Welcome.
We'll go in depth for most of the issues that you've talked about.
Sure.
So I'll get Esther's perspective. What do you think of the budget generally?
Thank you so much, Nancy and Eliot, for your thoughtful conversation and contribution. First, I would love to say that we cannot have a conversation about the budget and neglect the 52% of Uganda's population, we, the women. So it is very important and essential that as we have a conversation about budgeting in Uganda, we address the issues of the women. So the general outlook of the budget, of course, 52.37, some say 0.38, but we have looked at certain increase in certain areas that would affect women. We have looked at the health. We have seen there is quite a significant change, education, but we can also not neglect the challenges that have not been addressed. For example, the budgeting still does not look at menstrual hygiene provision of free sanitary towels to girls, a promise that has been made to us, the women organization, by the president since 2016. Until today, we do not see that come into play. When we talk about the social security, social protection of women, what happens to women when they leave their work after they have turned 60 years, all those issues have not been addressed. But still, we recommend the government for the slight improvement in health and education, because we realize there has been an increase in the money allocated for the education and health sector. So that being said, I believe the budget outlook, just from a view, one would say it looks fairly good. But when you really take a deeper look with the gendered lenses and the feminine lenses, then you can actually tell that there is much of work that needs to be done for us to achieve equitable and fair society for women and girls.
Thank you very much for those deliberations. We'll of course also go into depth with that. We've just been joined by another panelist. In the studio today, we have Honorable Kemigisha Sharon as well. She's the councillor in Wandegeya. Honorable, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much.
So before you joined us, we were talking about the general outlook on the budget, and I want to get your opinion. What did you think after listening to the budget? Like just a short thought. What did you think when you heard the entire budget speech, or when you got a look at it?
Now, to me, I'll start from the theme itself that they gave the budget reading, because when you look at how they managed to get all those words into the theme, it literally does not speak to every Ugandan. Because when you look at, if you say that you want to manifest the economy into commercialization, agriculture, personally, I think they would have first gotten the numbers, how many Ugandans that are going to be benefiting from that, and how clearly have they arranged the agriculture sector.
So you do not feel like it reflects
It
the
doesn't,
needs of...
No, it doesn't really reflect to the needs of every Ugandan, according to where we are as Ugandan now and what we really need.
I'm going to play devil's advocate a little bit.
Okay.
Because I want to understand. I would think that the government investing in agriculture or investing in the economy through agriculture, industrialization, expanding and broadening services, and also providing access to markets is a way of helping the citizens grow.
It wouldn't be bad, but at times what the government does, it brings brilliant and good ideas, but when they are half cooked. To me, I think they would have made thorough research to what is really happening at the ground for them to come up with something. Because at the end of the day, we need to first get the Ugandans prepared to what they are bringing them. Because when you look at that, you have to first arrange and see what percentages is needed to achieve what you want to achieve. The idea is good, but the preparation is not.
I want to come back to that during the conversation, but first I want us to talk about to delve into deeply. So I am going to get Eliot's opinion from a gender responsive perspective. So the government has put a lot of programs tailored towards social protection, and I want you to tell us how does this benefit women? Do you think that the budget in its state reflects the needs of the women and can be adequately and will adequately address the needs of women?
Yeah, thank you so much. To some extent, yes, and some extent, no. The budget is like you see a map.
Yes.
That is going to take you from here and there. If you have used the Google map, it will continue directing you. And remember, you have planned that you are going to Tinda. So in its content, the government plans how to spend. And in this case, the government of Uganda has planned to spend 72.3 trillion, as you said,
yes.
And those who listened to the budget reading. But for the sake of gender responsiveness within this budget of 2025-2026, we still ask the question of where is the money going to come from? Generally, where is the money going to come from? Because to some extent, some of us as women, we may think that the increased debt is not going to affect us. But the increased debt is going to affect everyone. It may be today, tomorrow, or in the future. Sometimes we say our grandchildren will be the ones to pay the debt. But you still need to ask a question when you hear what Hajat is saying in terms of the budget theme, industrialization and commercialization of agriculture. You still go back to ask the question of you from the government of who is going to gain from commercialization of agriculture. I will still take you back to the State of the Nation, where the President mentioned of the subsistence agriculture and commercialization of agriculture. Because in the budget, if we talk of commercialization of agriculture, it means we are talking of coffee, the cash crops you studied in school, the coffee, the cotton in Jinja, the mines maybe in Rupa, and then maybe we are talking of cassava in Palisa, and maybe we are talking of sorghum, and we are talking of Irish in Kisoro, and then maybe we are talking of millet in Ramo, and maybe we are talking of matoke in Ibshenya and Tungam, as the president says. But then when you go deeper to understand how government is going to allocate this half budget, I believe it is going to be half budget because we don't have, we have not seen enough resources in terms of the tax revenue base that is going to able us to finance the budget. And it becomes very hard for us in terms of being responsive. And we may need also as women to think through of commercializing of agriculture, but where? Because we know very well that in Uganda it is about 25% of women that own land that maybe they can own and even say they can access and control if they want, let's say, if they wanted to grow those crops that are going to be commercialized. So it becomes hard. And then we find that the budget may be, as she said, from her perspective, you find that it is a budget that has a very good outlook. It is a budget that we have seen allocation of resources, but we may need to ask, if we're talking of commercialization of agriculture and industrialization, where are the farmers going to get money for pesticides? Because today, different farmers in different regions of the country, whether we go north, whether we go central, whether we go south, and maybe the other places, people cannot now grow food without having pesticides. And pesticides are very, very expensive. So I wonder, if a woman can't manage pads for a month, how are the women is going to manage the pesticides? Lately, I was saying that I should not look at the budget perspective without talking about the district that I know, or the region that I know. I'll just give you an example of women in agriculture, maybe even men in agriculture who are practicing agriculture, not thinking of the 80% of women in agriculture, but even subsistence farming in our communities. People, when you buy 5 kilograms of beans and you want to plant them, you are not going to get them. The season that has just ended, there are very few households that got those kilos that they planted because they did not have money for pesticides. And everything that you grow in Kisoro, people would grow, and many people around the country would say, I want to go to Kisoro and I want to eat the Kisoro Irish. But they no longer have more than 2 sacks in a household. And meaning that we are going to suffer in terms of food security and famine. And we are not going to forget that this budget is allocating funds, but it is not going even to help people to eat well in terms of nutrition, meaning that the budget is also going to affect the health budget. Agriculture can affect the health budget in a way if we have not been fairly allocated our funds very well. You don't have pesticides, meaning that you are going to talk about commercialization, and the men are going to say, we are the ones who owns land. So if it is coffee that is bringing us money, it is our land and we are going to grow coffee. If it is cotton, men are going to say we are the ones who are growing cotton. Even sugarcane and ginger. You have heard the thing that we have had if you are talking of social protection, even of the children. We are also going to see increased child labor in the regions where they are growing sugarcane. And we are going also to see child labor. We have had like a lot of, increased child labor in places like Isinjiro, like in Tungamo, like Bushenyi. But people are saying it is Matok that is we're going to commercialize it. And then you find that our budget is not going to finance all those areas.
I want to ask you, before I move on to
Yes.
Esther, many people say that that concentrating on commercialization, industrialization, just like you noted, neglects food production. And how else does it widen inequalities in terms of income between men and women and other vulnerable groups of people?
Yeah, I want to use that saying some time back when we were still understanding how the development processes existed. And we have had that talk and scenario in Bushenyi, that people in Bushenyi produce a lot of milk and they grow a lot of millet.
Yes.
Of which these are the things that are going to add on nutrition for the children and child health and even health of generally the household. Yes. But then these people would sell millet, would sell milk, and not give them to the children. So that at the end of the day, the children are malnourished, and at the end they are sick, and at the end you are taking them to the hospital and you are paying more money. So meaning that the inequality is going to happen. But I would use also another scenario of what is happening generally in different regions and different households where we have decided to remove everything. I'll also use again an example of Ruchiga, where I come from, when development experts and then said now it is NADS and we are not going to continue growing sorghum and Irish, the common foods, the common produces that we had, and then say now you grow tea. And everyone cut and started growing tea. But then at the end, because he talked about the market systems, at the end there was no market for there was no market for tea, you know, meaning that the inequality is just going to be looking at, you don't need even to go into economics to find out, to use different models to understand. You see it immediately. The child is not going to go to school because tea has not been sold. Yes. But again, there's no food at home. There's no food security at home. Then it means some men are going to leave you and say, maybe this woman is not good for me. Let me go and get another woman who is going to dig better, you know. And then you see again, I know recently we were saying that the gaps, the inequality gap can also bring out an increase of gender-based violence, because there is no one who's going to remain in a household where there is no money. So basically, as I end on this, how the gaps come in is because we may not need to put a lot of all the money into commercialization or industrialization.
Yes.
Those who can do that can go into that process. But we may need also to continue having our foods in terms of the subsistence farming, so that our children can have enough food, our households can have enough food. And I still believe that the government can do more in terms of pests and diseases, you know, I mean, trying to bring in budget that can help farmers.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you very much for that deliberation. Esther? Yes, earlier on you were talking about how you feel like other areas were neglected in the budget. Would you like to expound on that? What areas were prioritized and which areas were neglected in this budget, in your opinion?
Okay, to begin with, the budget allocates the greatest figure to governance and security. That is over 9.9 trillion. It only gives 5 point something to health and only 5 point something to education. Our sector as women is not governance so much. It's not security. Issues that affect a mother in Uganda is the hospital. Can her child afford to go to school?
Yes.
While they are girl child in school, can they have sanitary towels?
Yes.
Issues that affect women are those to do with national insurance for women. But the budget barely mentions anything about insurance for women or national insurance. Yet where does the woman's money go? Taking their kid to the hospital, paying for their kids' school fees. So I believe the budget has essentially neglected the core things that affect the 52% of this population, which is the women. That is health and education, and also the element of not providing sanitary towels, but also exemptions on essential things that women need, like the particular medicine that women need. Those medicines till today do not have particular exemption on taxes. Sanitary towels do not still have exemption on taxes. So the government has neglected those two areas that would directly affect women. When we talk about the sexual reproductive health rights, oh my God, there is nothing in the budget that talks about that particular thing in the budget. Yet we know what affects women essentially is their reproductive system. Are they guided on how to have children and when to have children? Girls are having abortions in schools. But there is no talk about SHR education. When you look at the budget and the allocation for the money given to the health sector, it does not mention anything to do on educating women on their sexual reproductive rights. It is about infrastructures. But then if you cannot address these issues in the budget and have a gender responsive budgeting idea in the mind for the 52 population, then you have essentially neglected the women. Rather focusing on the security, allocating it 2.9 billion, it is really not rational. So I think much as the government thinks we need the security, but how then are you protecting people that are unhealthy? So I think that is really important.
You want to say something?
No, I wanted to add something on what she has said. Much as the government is looking at the security and the governance, but have it tried so much to know why the insecurities is there? Have they dug so deep into this? Because when there is social insecurity within the community, that leads to poor governance. As she has said, they've not looked at why our children are having abortion and all that. Can we go back to the grassroots and find the lasting solution to what is causing insecurities in the community?
Thank you. And you know, we've talked about inequalities, we've talked about SRHR, and there's something else I want to talk to you, Esther, about. You're from the Women Pro Bono Initiative,
Yes.
and I want you to touch on justice, because in the past year I have seen so many instances of violence against women, femicide in the news, and what is your perspective on the allocation to justice, for example?
Yes, I also saw an allocation for rule of law and justice.
Yes.
A significant figure, I should say. And the parliament has been passing a number of bills.
Yes.
To first mention, all the money that is allocated to the parliament, I saw it is over 102 billion. Let me tell you this, they give women only 3 million to celebrate the Women's Day. Only 3 on the 100 point something billion allocated to the parliament for its particular years to run its activities. So when we talk about injustice to the women, we have to also, yes, it starts from in the house. Is the parliament in position to prioritize the needs of the women? When we talk about gender-based violence, we currently have an act for gender-based violence. They have a bill for sexual offenses, but are they really tackling the source of these issues? Because we cannot say women are going to achieve a position where they are having justice without tackling those particular problems. So when we look at justice for the women, it is still an imbalance on our side as women. And there is a lot to do. Still, I would urge the government in the same manner to have a gender responsive mind when budgeting. Budget for, they do not, in Uganda we don't even have government owned facilities where your husband beats you and you can go and be sheltered for
Shelters.
a month.
Yes. Oh, the NGO sector owns all the shelters.
Certainly.
Yes.
When we look at condom, okay, the government gives out condoms. Have you ever seen a female condom?
They're there, but they're scarce.
Certainly. So when we are to talk about justice, there are so many things that we need to address as women. And the conclusion is, it is still an imbalance. As women, we are still suffering the historical imbalance in justice.
Okay, so what I'm getting from this conversation is that there are systemic issues that are barring the access for women to achieve the goals that they want, and unless they are addressed, we cannot achieve the projected goals that are in the national budget.
Certainly.
Okay, now I'll go into governance, of course, and accountability. You know, you came in and you said, no, this budget doesn't reflect the situations of the common man, and I would like you to expound on that, because when we talk about the current situation of the common man in Uganda, what do you mean? And in terms of the government's response, how is the government being accountable? Are they showing great accountability? And if not, then what is happening?
I think that the problem starts within the governance itself. Because if the people that sit at the highest hierarchy of this country can't really deliberate certain roles to certain departments, I think that is what it is really affecting the outcomes of what they want to achieve as a government. I will give you an example of whereby even in this era, the division do not have we are still advocating for rights of solving our problems as a devolution of power per se. We are in the government whereby certain departments do not have power to execute what they are supposed to execute, simply because they do not have access to the money that is
So you mean like the 6.8
Yes.
trillion allocated to local government doesn't reach some parts?
It doesn't. I'll give an example because I serve into the local government governance. At the division, we do not have the devolution of power. I'll give an example of whereby we collect taxes in different division, and then the whole amount has to go to the district, whereby it comes back to the division, whereby the representatives have to write the wish lists of the communities to send them to the district for them to just select what they think will be enough for the communities. So it goes back on how the system operates. Minus the devolution of power, a lot is not going to be achieved. The money is there, but the allocation of it is the problem.
So I have another question for you. So there is the Initiative for Social and Economic Rights published a report on the budget, a small report on the budget with the allocations and what they think. And they had a section for wasteful expenditures. Yes. And let me just read it out for everyone in studio to hear. There is special meals and drinks, which is 300 billion. I don't know if that is for State House or the House or the or the August House. Then there is travel. There is welfare and entertainment, 137 billion. And there is travel abroad, 114 billion. There is official ceremonies and state functions, 38 billion. Bedding, clothing, footwear, and related services, 134 billion. Now, don't get me wrong, because our leaders need to look, they represent us. So I feel like some of the allocations in the budgeting are a little bit necessary. For example, the one for official ceremonies and state functions, perhaps, and maybe also welfare. Welfare, I don't know about entertainment, but welfare. I feel like
that all research puts you in a position to think that people that sit on the decision-making tables do not relate with Ugandans.
Certainly.
And they are too selfish not to think like they are not Ugandans. That, to me, that is what I think. Because a normal Ugandan would actually, if you give that kind of money to a normal Ugandan, would find a proper way of allocating that money. There is, what do they wear? What do they use? It puts you in a position.
One of the things I asked myself
weirdly.
was that, do the salaries not take care of their personal clothing? And
they would just make you think like you're not a normal Ugandan.
And Nancy, can I please say
yes,
something
please come
about
in.
that? So when you look at the domestic financing of our budget, most of the money is coming from out.
Indeed.
But the money that is coming from within is going to cater for those things, how they dress, how they eat, how they look. But when you question the money to finance the health sector, they'll put the burden 75% on external financing, donation, and what. So that brings us to a point to question, what are the priorities of the people that lead us? Even when they're budgeting, they want to use our money, taxpayers, to buy those things. But when it comes to building for us hospitals, putting our kids in school, they will look for donors. So what happens one day if Trump cuts off the donation? It is our mothers that will die in hospitals where they're still having proper clothing. So that questions the priorities of our leaders.
Okay, and you were talking about external financing. We know that the external financing has significantly decreased, especially with US cutting aid, but also with the shifting priorities in funding. The funding is going more into climate change, into economic empowerment of youth, and other things really, but not like women-centered programs like sexual reproductive health rights. So, in your opinion, how best can we advocate for a budget or for financing that is tailored towards women's issues, as a person from a women's rights organization?
I understand that could be a bulky burden for women. It is not an easy journey that we are going to walk.
Yes.
It is not easy. One, we can start with advocating in a way of writing. Women organizations out there, please publish as much as you can. Sensitize the population about how the money is being used. Thereafter, we can demand our leaders that when we know that you guys are using our money to buy nice clothing, when you come back in our constituency to ask for votes, we shall remind you that you remember when you're doing the budgeting, you guys, because it is the responsibility of the parliamentarians to pass the budget with the help of other Ministry of Finance. But why are they not checking such things? So first things, as women-led organizations, let us sensitize the population of women on what budgeting means, on what is their role, is there consultation. After we have sensitized our women, then let's make sufficient consultation. Engage with the female members of parliament, because they have the mandate to question certain things. Why are they not doing so? Then we can likewise demand from the responsive ministries. The president of Uganda has promised certain things to women. To date, we have not seen any. In 2022, the First Lady promised us a factory to make pads. Nothing till today.
Who is demanding and advocating for that?
You see?
Fulfilled.
Certainly.
I believe or I feel as a woman, I do not feel much represented by my female representative in that house. I think either something went wrong or they are just being suffocated within that house. If at all they could just have a space where they could raise these voices and at least keep on demanding what is really rightfully for us as women in that house, a lot would have been achieved. Because I believe there is no way that this budget would have been passed minus being fully represented, at least half of it.
Yeah.
Oh, but you're a leader too. So I just want to ask you small, what
What now?
well, what goes wrong?
Maybe because before you ask that, maybe we need to be aware that Uganda as a country has policies.
Yes.
Yes, we're all aware that we have the gender policy, but again we have the Public Management Act, Public Finance Management Act of 2015, that really brings out I think Section 9, the issue of budgeting with a gender responsive eye, and that's why the government of Uganda has the certificate of gender. We may not need to ask a lot why our women that are representing us in parliament are not pushing for those issues. And maybe we may not need to be asking why this budget, especially 2025, 2026, why is it that the half of it is funded by external funding and especially the debt. And then we may need to ask the question of the burden, of the debt burden. But again, if you go back to what you are saying and what she's saying in terms of where is the money for women in the budget, and then the question of job creation and economic justice for women, we may need to go deeper, that where we had reached, in my own perspective, the gender and equity certificate had pushed us to the extent that agencies and departments were now saying we have to budget, we have to plan and budget with a gender lens. We have to make sure that everyone is included, you know. But again, it seems there is completely, I don't know whether you should call it a slip-off, you know. Like, it's like we are becoming more blind than before in terms of planning and budgeting for the work that we have been doing. And if you know exactly where this had started, far back with the Forum for Women in Democracy and the ACFOD and then SafeBag, and then the ministry saying we have to plan and budget accordingly. But again, you hear Honorable talking about the issue of governance. And the gender and equity certificate specifically was giving us the way that the budget has to be participatory. And she's talking about it. How many representatives in education that were aware that there is the amount of money that is going to be allocated for education, and how many girls and women were there to know that this is going to be health and the issues that we are talking about. For her, she's talking about sexual reproductive health rights, and she's bringing the issue of pads, the issue of abortion and what. But then we also need the 50 and above, the 45 and above. We want to see the health sector budget bringing out issues of monopoles, issues of all these medicines that are really going to help. And then we also need to talk about the issue of social protection. The money that they are giving our grandmothers, our mothers, it is not this money that is going to help them in terms of even servicing the non-communicable diseases. We have had many people cry, you know, of people going to Murago, people going to Chirudu, and maybe they have kidney failure. We have Ruth who just passed on, and maybe she would have, she could have been going for checkups, but because the budget can't allow her, and then you can't go to the hospital and then find those medicine that are going to help. And then even sometimes it becomes hard for people to run to Murago or Chirudu for dialysis because the machines are few, you know. So if we talk of the gender responsiveness of the budget of 2025-2026 and talk about the issues of justice in terms of sexual reproductive health rights, we may need also to go deeper to question where is the cost effectiveness of the budget. I think that's why Ajat is bringing the issue of dressing up, and that's why Carol is saying that Isa came out with that wasteful resources. Actually, for them, they don't look at it as a wasteful resource.
Certainly.
No, certainly they are not, because that is exactly why they think money should be collected and then spent. And she's talking about the issue of the 3 million. We have talked about the 3 million for a long time. If the budget is increasing from 52 trillion to 72, why is it that we are not seeing more allocated, an increase allocated to women issues? But again, let's not forget even about the youth. The youth where we have the boys and girls. And we are talking about the parish development model. We are talking about the GROW project. But how much money is allocated to youth in which area? In which area? Are these the youth in areas of hard to reach area? Is it the youth maybe in the city center? And she talked of mapping, and she talked of knowing exactly what the citizens want this budget to fund, you know, a choice, you know. I remember there's an organization that did a campaign on what women want. What do the youth want? You know, if you're talking about job creation, every youth is not going to make doors. He's not going to do metal. Every youth is not going to do beauty and salon. And every youth is not going to do tailoring. But even when you do tailoring, where are the machines? You know, at the market. Because skilling me, saying you have allocated a budget for skilling me to do tailoring, and you have not allocated money as a seed capital, as a start-off. Because that is where our problem is. Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
I want to get back to you on another issue.
Sure.
Because we were talking about how the budget does not represent the needs of the people adequately. But now there is a debt. That debt which is which is 41.7 trillion that we are supposed to pay. Now they say that for every 100 shillings that you pay in taxes, nearly 40 will go towards repaying the debt, and the interest of 60 shillings will be for service delivery and essential government operations, while prioritizing what the Ministry of Finance technocrats refer to as productive sectors of the economy or infrastructure development that could improve the country. With the rates of unemployment, with the exploitative labor market, how is this feasible? How is this feasible? We already say that the budget does not adequately represent the needs of the people, that essential aspects of the budget have been underfunded. And, you know, let me just bring in something that recently happened. Last week we had the traffic, the automated
I think
the
that
automated traffic.
that clearly explains
penalties.
why the government of late needs tax on each and everything.
Yeah.
To a point of even reaching a point of telling the people that work that are into the labor externalization, the money that they send. If it happens that you don't send money and you keep on saving the money, on your return, they have to tax that money as it is getting into our country. It clearly explains why they need tax it literally on each and everything.
But also, what is the impact on the ordinary Ugandan? Because
Is that my question?
yes, that's your question for
Yeah,
the next year.
The thing is, I'm a tax just campaigner, and the biggest question is, who pays the tax? And when you are paying the tax, where are you getting that money to pay as tax? First of all, if you have been moving around town, and the number of women and men that are in business, of late everyone is crying.
Yeah.
The returns are very low in a way that you can't manage to even sell the products that you have. You can't manage to say that I am going to pay rent, pay the workers that I am working with in the shops, and then pay tax. And the biggest question is, if you have been following on the work that Siatini, Akina, and other organizations that are working on tax justice and the budget processes, you find that we still have a very big problem. The government says they are going to put money in infrastructure, and that is going to help people in business to be able to have enough funds and then be able to generate revenue. But again, you find that a person who has a shop, I'll just use that model. A person who has a shop in town has about 3 children who are at home without jobs, without a job, okay? Meaning that even the money that this person would bring in as tax is going to be feeding the people at home. And then the question is, if government is saying that it is infrastructure development, which roads are the government going to work on? The government is working on roads in Kororo where people drive good cars. But again, you look at people who are driving like taxis in those villages, and even those who are in agriculture that are going to produce food and bring it to the city to sell so that they can pay the tax. By the time you get from your farm to the market in the community, the roads are impassable. That is one thing. And you expect that person to generate revenue. And then this person is going to come to the market. By the time you get to the market, they have already started picking taxes, those busuru and what. By the time you get to Nakasero, you are not even looking at your profit margin. And then you find all these women are packing their things on a big lorry because they don't have enough money. They have already spent, you know. But still remember, at Nakasero market, they are supposed to pay. But remember, even the person of the car person, has already taken on the money. So you ask yourself, how are we going to service the debt with this low production, with business that is not bringing in profits, with the household that has 2 to 3 people who are not working? You know, it becomes a problem. And lastly, the biggest question is, if I pay this my tax, if I pay my taxes, am I going to see electricity in my community? Do I have water in my community? You know, are the roads passable or they are impassable? So everything is like, so someone decides to say, I am not going to declare what I do. We are getting money from pay as you earn. You know very well.
Yeah.
You have 23 staff. But remember what happened when you said close the doors. Then UK aid says I'm closing doors. Then Trump is saying no more Ugandans to go to America to kuba chain. Meaning things are becoming harder, that even the budget framework that we are seeing is not financed. What happens later? We see corruption increasing. And then by the time you are talking about the budget is not gender responsive, even those whom we think are going to reach the money are not reaching it. And then people get issues with mindset change of stealing and killing. And then some of us get depressed and depression,
The mental health.
the mental health. And then that increases the cost effectiveness of our health sector. Tourism, lastly, would say it is going to give us more funds. But the security we are talking about, I really appreciate that we have seen money going into security, but still people are still fearing. You know,
With a poor
publicity,
that
you
we
know,
have as a country.
so it still becomes a problem that maybe towards was going to give us more taxes, but again, how many people? We still see again Ugandans being charged a lot.
Yes.
A Ugandan is going to be here and say, I want to go to Chobe, but the amount of money they are going to charge you is even more than the investor who is coming. I hope I did.
You did. And you had me contemplating for a minute.
Yes.
I was deeply contemplating.
Okay.
So Sharon, I also want to pick your mind on something else, because we are talking about how the budget is not funding priorities. But what is it like in Wandegeya, for example? Because I know Wandegeya in your constituency is a business center, but also I know that you have certain pockets of the urban poor in Katanga,
the slum side of
Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
represent. Now, my sister here was talking about when you put a lens into the tourism sector and all that. I do not want to be an advocate of wrongdoing, but with the population of the youth that are more on social media, I looked at the theme they wanted, that digital transformation. There is no way you're going to be telling people that are more present on social media than you are to be publicizing a good picture out there without first working on their issues that are affecting them. You talked about the slum area of where I represent. That is a community whereby you're going to find a fellow youth that has a budget of 2,000. Like literally the way of survival for this person does not put him or her in a position of speaking good about his or her country. So before we look at what the budget is saying, that they do want to achieve the digital transformation, have they tried to solve the problems that are affecting these people that would be the face of?
Are they aware?
It is the government that is supposed to do the advocacy and the civic education to these young people out there, but it is not doing its work. It is like leaving no option to these people. They'll keep on putting a bad picture out there, which is not helping the tourists to come from other countries to come visit Uganda. The name that is being painted about Uganda does not put other people in position to come.
In 2022, Farmford had an outreach, a Women's Day outreach in Wandegeya Market, and I remember you were there, and you were there. So, what do the women have to say about the budget? Or are we still on they don't know the budget?
Exactly. It only takes someone who has managed to maneuver and get into these spaces like I've done, but it's only a few that would succeed. Looking at the mindset of them, they are in this space, I do not even care. Now what if I get to know what is it helping me? Okay. So the government is literally doing a disservice of not letting Ugandans know what is really happening, because if someone is not informed, it puts that person in a better position to be ruled, to be led. I think it is done deliberately to leave information, because it is public information. But when you look at what is being aired on certain television, does it add value to the Ugandans to know what is really happening in their country? So it is only a few that get into these spaces by the willing of themselves. Because if I'll give myself as an example, if at all I didn't interest myself into becoming a leader, there are certain things that I wouldn't be knowing now compared to my background and where I come from, because I'm born and raised in the ghettos of Kawempe. And so many other young leaders and young women out there, they are still stuck in that space simply because they do not know what is happening.
Yeah,
Thank you. Oh, yes,
I
go
just
ahead.
want to make a small contribution on what Honorable said. So in the budget, there is a significant amount of allocation for Women Empowerment Fund. But you find that barely women know about this.
And where does that money go
Exactly.
after not being
Where,
used?
So the women will never come up to ask for that money. Then who takes that money? So I think the government is very intentional on hiding this information from the women.
Actually, from the public itself, not
I
necessarily
want to say something. There are certain times when you hear on the news that certain monies that were allocated were taken back to the consolidated fund because they were not used on time. For me, it also really confuses me because I feel like we need this money urgently, and the bureaucracy in disbursing it doesn't make sense. But as a young person, you are employed, so I feel like this is fairly a privileged conversation, especially when you talk about employment.
Yeah, but to answer that on the absorption capacity, sometimes when we move in to do budget monitoring and service delivery, you find when like some local governments say money comes in when it is late, and then it is not absorbed, it is not used, and at the end it has to go back to the consolidated fund. But the question is, when should money come in, and who demands for that money to come in? You get? How can we be saying on this side that we don't have enough funds, we are on debt, and then at the same time someone is saying money came in late and we did not use the money, you know? So it is also a question, as she says, who is supposed to demand for us for that? And it is us that are supposed to demand. Civil society is supposed to be there as a voice. If there are women in the market that are not going to raise the voice, and there are women in your community that are not going to raise the voice, and maybe there are youth, boys and girls in the schools, in the universities who not demand, pro bono initiative can come out and say, we have this statement. Why is it that we have money that is not spent when we have other things that are not worked on? So I think it depends on a priority. Have we found that there is money that has been on welfare and has not been spent? It is also a question for the listeners to continue pondering and continue holding the government accountable.
Yes, very true.
Yes. So as a young woman, a youth at that, what can we do individually? What can we do? Because I do not think this is something that should be left only to leaders, to civil society. But what is your advice to young people? How should they help us out of these problems? Because there are many.
Yeah, young people, big population of the country. One, our first problem is mindset. We still have youths who think the politics, governance, budgeting does not concern them. As long as they can afford as long as they can afford an iPhone, go out to an expensive bar, their life is essentially sorted. So what do we need? Let's first change the mind of the youth. Let us have youths that understand they are the leaders of this nation. And leading does not mean that you're holding a parliamentarian position. It does not mean that you are sitting on round tables. It means that even home, in Waise, in Kawempe, in Machinje, wherever you stay, you are a responsible citizen. You question your leaders as low as the LC, who is taking corruption for land sale. You question your leader as low as anyone that you can question. So first we need to address the mind of a youth.
Yes.
How can we align them with the goals of these nations? Divert them from thinking that a good life is about taking nice beers and liquor and having a nice iPhone and having likes on YouTube, Twitter, and Instagram, you know? So we need to change the mind of the youth. You can imagine the budget has been read, but you'll find a 27-year-old who barely has an idea, educated with a bachelor's degrees in something.
In economics.
But they barely have an idea. So we have youths that are very disinterested in the affairs of this nation. So let's first deal with the minds of the youth. Whose responsibility is it? Mine and yours. We have peers. You have peers. You have peers. I also have peers. But what conversations do we hold? Nice dresses. How often do you talk to your friends about leadership? So it goes back to how we need to change how we think. First thing, as a young woman, I think that would be the first thing that I would address, the mind of a young person. And I believe with that being addressed, then we can see youths that prioritize the interest of their nations, who will not post their potholes and shame our country on internet, rather than demanding for the need directly from the political leaders that are responsible for them. Then after we have done the mindset change, then let's unite as youths. We are separated on political lines. This one is for NOB, this one is for NRM. But at the end of the day, we are the largest population that suffer the challenge of this country. We suffer the unemployment. We are the ones that will study for 5 years and go to Dubai to work as a maid. Not the MP, not the 75-year-old, not even the 56-year-old, but me, the 25-year-old. So we need to change our mind, then we need to unite. After uniting, we can demand with a collective voice for things that favor us as youths.
Wow. We're coming to the end of this show, unfortunately. And as we wrap up, I want to get like a concluding statement from all of you, or what you advise people out there, a call out, or your thoughts on certain things and how you feel people should address them. So to conclude, and you know, Esther, you can start, and then we'll go to Eliot and we'll end with Sharon.
Okay, my parting shots, particularly to women-led organization, let's not tire. Let's push for women's right in all angles. Let it be in the industries, factories, health, education, everywhere. Women-led organization, do not tire. To my fellow youths, I pray that you understand that this nation is not for the people that we think it is for. It is for us, the bigger population and the young, dependent population. And to the government, political leaders, female members of parliament, we trusted you with certain positions, and we are still waiting on you to act as you promised in the campaigns. So I pray, as a nation, we understand what is our priorities and what are our current challenges. Then we can achieve a population where we do not have gender equalities, and also correct the historical balance that has always been inappropriate for women.
Thank you so much. Eliot.
Yeah, thank you so much, dear viewers. My parting shot is around the issue of the National Development Plan that the government put in place, and linking it to this budget of 2025-2026. I'm asking the government to implement the budget, but putting in mind the National Development Plan, because there's a very good plan that is gender responsive. And to the women of Uganda, as the young person says, we are not tiring, because we know Uganda has been on the map because of the gender certificate, of which we really lobbied and advocated for a long time, and we can't lose it. Let's continue the journey. Together we can, and we are not leaving anyone behind.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'll begin with a vote of thanks to the Civic space that always has this space so that we can add our voices to our country. Mine won't be much, but I'll keep on telling Ugandans out there to live with a purpose. If you put it in yourself that you're living with a purpose, it goes back where it starts from the families. How are you managing your life? What things are you interesting yourself into? It goes back to Esther, what he has said, that what conversations do we have? So let us live with a purpose as Ugandans, because Uganda is here even after the leaders, because when you look at the number of leaders that represent us, there are just few of us Ugandans. So Ugandans out there, we need to be living with a purpose and loving our country more. I know it is really hard to be Ugandan, but there is no any other country apart from this. As long as God, it is a God-given. We are Ugandans, however much we are going to be speaking all this English, being out there, but we are Ugandans first, and no one is going to fight for Ugandan apart from Ugandan themselves.
Very true.
Thank you so much. Well, that was the women's perspective on the national budget 2025-2026. In the studio, I was joined by Kemigisha Sharon. I was joined by Eliot. I was also joined by Esther Nakitende from Women's Pro Bono Initiative. Thank you so much for keeping it Civic Space TV. Like, subscribe, but also follow us on our socials down there. This was the women's perspective. My name is Caroline Ayot. I'm your host for today.